Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on site from the best coffee growing countries in the world, located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Unwanted sexting or photos, inappropriate jokes, even tickling or wrestling can feel like a violation. Catcalling, cornering, or groping, getting them drunk or high for sex, recording sexual acts without permission, hurting someone because of their sexual orientation, raping a family member, a child, a date, a friend, a stranger, purchasing a human being for sex. You make the choice every single time. Sexual violence is many things. Make a choice. Do not do it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lulia. Clear tonight with a low of 51, then sunshine Tuesday with a high of 82. Crooner Supper Club has an exciting mix of shows on 3 stages to round out the summer season. Find the concert experience that's right for you at croonersmn.com. Crooner Supper Club, just north of 694 off Central Avenue in Fridley.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Cody Cup, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
Bonjour, Anin, everybody. This is Ogumaganu Akwe. We have Dr. Antony Stately standing in for Wakanja Hade, or Robert Pilot, today, and he is on location for a very special episode of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Dr. Stately, where are you this evening?
Hey, good afternoon, Buju, Ogama. I am at the Mystic Lake Casino and Conference Center in Prior Lake, Minnesota, where what feels like maybe the 5th or 6th generation of our annual First Medicines Conference is being held today, tomorrow, and half of Wednesday, I believe. I always look forward to this conference every single year that they have it. The last time I went was maybe 2 years ago. I think probably maybe 3 years ago, right before COVID. And it was down at Prairie Island. And it was an amazing experience. So I was really looking forward to today's experience. And they always have a lineup of great speakers talking about, our first medicines. And, this year's conference is focusing on traditional medicines and traditional foods and food as medicine. So really great conversations. I dipped into a couple of really great workshops this afternoon. In the room we're in, they just finished having a session with Victoria Johnson from Indigenous Lotus, doing a workshop for people talking about movement and the healing power of movement. So really great conference. And if you aren't lucky enough to have signed up, or if you're one of the ones that did sign up and regrettably didn't come, try your best to come next year, because I think it's a really great opportunity to learn from folks in our community who have a lot of really great information, and also to just commune with people in our community, share information and share spirit. And I've had some great talks, great laughs, all the great stuff. Did a lot of laughing over the lunch hour, actually, quite frankly. Another one of our first medicines. Is something we're really good at. So let's bring our guests in.
Absolutely. Dr. Stately, I'm going to add our guests in. I'll have you introduce them. And before you introduce them, I just want to let our listeners know that this portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization working for climate justice. Who do you have with you today, Dr. Stately?
This evening we have the executive director, Sharon Day of Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And we also have her colleague, Suzanne Nash of Indigenous Peoples Task Force as well. And I think they both have worked together with all of their staff to organize and launch the conference, and really proud of the work they do. In full disclosure, I'm an Indigenous Peoples Task Force board member and have been for 7 years, and I'm really, really proud of the work that they do in our community, and happy to be here and have them talk about their work. So.
Wonderful. Sharon, would you like to come on and introduce yourself first?
Yeah, Bujun and Indwema Ganidug, Nagamo Maing and Indishnakas. I said, greetings, my relatives. My name is Singing Wolf, although most people know me by my English name, Sharon Day. And I'm the executive director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And happy to be here tonight.
Wonderful. And Suzanne, if you wouldn't mind giving us your information and title, introduce yourself.
My name is Suzanne Nash, and I'm the program manager at Indigenous Peoples Task Force. I wear a couple different hats there. One, I'm the program manager for IndigiBaby and the event coordinator for this conference that's here today. And then also I'm the program manager for our tobacco program, Reclaiming Traditional Tobacco, and teaching about the dangers of drugs and alcohol.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're so glad to have you both joining us today with Dr. Stately. If I could just kick it off with a question, Dr. Stately, I'd like to know what everybody's favorite part of the conference so far is.
Well, I know that my favorite part of the conference is always the food. 2 of the workshops I went to today had food focus on them, right? And in one conference, I got to taste stuff and eat stuff. And I learned a little bit of really important information about like how to do a better job of managing my type 2 diabetes, using things other than, like metformin. I'm on metformin again. I had an elevated A1C a couple weeks ago with my doctor, so I had to get back on that. And so in the workshop, they started talking about it. I was like, oh, I'm paying attention now because I want to do anything except metformin. Man, that stuff really rips up my gut. So I paid attention during the conversation about gut health and how to use natural foods and natural medicines to sort of, modulate and moderate my blood sugar so I don't have to be on those medicines. I'm really looking forward to implementing those things. So I think Sharon has a really great part that she loves a lot. And that I'm going to let her talk a little bit about. It's going to happen tonight after we get off the radio. So, Sharon.
Yeah, well, before I talk about that, I want to just say something about the speakers we had this morning. We had Dr. Melissa Lewis, who's from, who used to live in Minnesota and was at UMD in the medical school there, and then returned to her home in Cherokee, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And she did a workshop where she talked about some of the foods in Oklahoma and some of the things they're doing with a youth garden. And another one of our colleagues that we, Dr. Shady, he has worked with us on our IndigiBaby food. And speaking about metformin, he was saying that, the squash that we use, the Getty squash, actually, if you're taking metformin and you eat like a small bowl of the Getty squash in the evening, that will really help reduce your A1C3. And also it helps the body to digest the metformin a little bit better. And metformin really, Antony, is now being considered as sort of an anti-aging medicine, and it's also an antiviral. And so in the beginning of COVID, some patients early on were given like very high doses of metformin as an antiviral. So those are just some things that we pick up here at the conference, pieces of information that people have, and so really happy to have my good friend Dr. Melissa Lewis coming in on Zoom, and this afternoon was also Dr. Terry Maresca. Terry is a orthopedic surgeon and works in the state of Washington, but also is trained as a traditional medicine person. And so every year she comes and brings some great new information about traditional medicine. And she always tells people, like, just listen and observe and taste. So that's always great. Thank you.
Wonderful. We're just about to go to break, but just to let our listeners who might just be tuning in know, you are listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake. We've got a special episode here with our guest host, Dr. Antony Stately, who is live at the First Medicines Conference from the Mystic Lake Casino in Minnesota. We're excited and we'll be back with you shortly. Thanks for listening to Native Roots Radio.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
If the statistics say that 1 in 3 Native women and 1 in 6 Native men have experienced sexual assault in their lifetime, it means our whole community is affected by sexual violence. 1 is too many. Don't stand by, stand up. Don't engage in acts of sexual violence, and shut down the dirty jokes, the gossip, the victim blaming and shaming. As a community, we can change the way we respond. Contact the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to attend a workshop to learn more. Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Minnesotans age 65 plus might qualify for Health Partners Minnesota Senior Health Options. The plan includes personal support, coverage for medical, prescription drugs, and dental, plus over 30 extra benefits. Eligibility information is available at healthpartners.com/oneplan. Health Partners is a health plan that contracts with both Medicare and the Minnesota Medical Assistance Medicaid program to provide benefits of both programs to enrollees. Enrollment in Health Partners depends on contract renewal.
J&S Bean Factory is a Native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
This is Winona LaDuke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm Awake.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Hi, Anin Bonjour, everybody. This is Ogamaganua. We have a very special episode of Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake this evening. We have Dr. Antony Stately and 2 very special guests with us joining from the Mystic Lake Casino in Minnesota at the First Medicines Conference. We have guests today are Sharon Day, who's the Executive Director at the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And then we also have Suzanne Nash, who's a colleague of Sharon Day at the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And then, of course, we have our stunning and wonderful guest host, Dr. Antony Stately, who is the Executive Director at Native American Community Clinic in Minneapolis. Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you so much. So thanks for that information about metformin. It's anti-aging, so I'm definitely staying on that. Just kidding. Anyway, Sharon, welcome back. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Suzanne, actually, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Indigibaby, since that's kind of a program that you're sort of over. Help our listenership understand what Indigibaby is and what it's accomplishing, and what we can look forward to with that project.
Yeah, so Indigibaby is...
Oh, Suzanne, we just need you to unmute if you wouldn't mind. It's right there. Yep, it's right down there in the middle. So this is the great fun that we have of live radio. While we're waiting for
Sorry.
that. Oh, no problem. Thanks so much. Welcome back.
There we go. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, Indigibaby was a product that we dreamed about, having baby food that didn't have any sugars or preservatives in it, as we started this journey working with youth and our garden program. And so we decided that we would, like we do with many of our programs, we would grow cultivated indigenous food, and we decided to test it out using, our first product was wild rice and blueberries. We now have 6 recipes, and we hope to go live, or I shouldn't say go live, we hope to be on the shelves in the fall of 2022. So the idea was to create this baby food that babies could eat from the beginning without any sugar, because we know that you know, back in the day, through our we came where the food grew on water, we knew that our diets didn't consist of sugar until we were introduced to commodities, and we were giving that through trading. And so we're trying to reclaim our traditional ways of eating, growing, and harvesting foods. And that's kind of what the conference was about. So we are now in the final stages of Indigibaby, of actually packaging it through with Sean Sherman's crew is actually the ones who are packaging it. So we're able to keep it within our communities instead of selling it, outsourcing it. And so it's new, but we're just beginning, and we have a farm, and we're growing the Getty squash, which is one of the products that we'll have. And yeah.
Wow, that's really exciting. I don't know if you or Sharon know this, Suzanne, but I actually have a 6-month-old who's just starting solids, and it would be so wonderful if I had something safe and ready
Yeah.
on hand that is a traditional food for her. I'm so excited. I'm already thinking ahead, like, oh, she can start wild rice maybe around Christmas. You know, like it'll be a few more months before she
Right.
can handle that level, and the idea of getting to buy something indigenous instead of like Gerber sounds fabulous.
Right. So yeah, so I'm so excited because Melissa Lewis, who Sharon talked about earlier, son is our Indigibaby, real live Indigibaby is on the logo for our baby
Oh.
food, which is exciting in itself. Yes. And we're excited to launch the project. We will have, like I said, 6 recipes, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head right now, but wild rice and blueberries is one of them, just plain wild rice, and the Getty squash. And then I think there's a rutabaga and something else coming your way. So yeah, we're really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there going to be an Indigibaby website, or how are people going to
Yes.
find these products?
Yep. Yes, and right now we do have an Indigibaby website. If you go to www.indigenousppeoplestaskforce.org, or is it .com? I think it's .org. We have a site there where it talks about Indigibaby, how we got started, and you can find that there. And we'll be updating it as soon as we get the baby food package.
Oh, I'm so excited. Dr. Stately, thank you for bringing on such wonderful guests.
You're welcome. I'm
That's
super
amazing.
excited about it too. I can't wait to be wearing Indigibaby swag. Can you imagine how cool that's going to be at a powwow?
That
Like,
is going to be really cool.
out there, sporting your Indigibaby t-shirt and your hats and your this and that. That's really exciting. And of course, as a board member, I'm going to get one of the first shirts. I'm almost certain of it.
Yes, you will.
Well, you'll get an original shirt because you'll have to get, the prototype T-shirt, right? The prototype T-shirt and hat.
Of course. Hopefully it's over a size 5T because I'm definitely over a size 5T. Anyway,
Yes.
let's ask Sharon. Tell me a little bit about tonight's festivities. You're going to be leaving here in a couple minutes to go have dinner, but then after the dinner, you're having a pretty special event. Why don't you describe that work for us as well? Because that's been going on in the community for quite a while.
Yeah. So it's our Ikiduan Youth Theater Ensemble has spent the last several weeks making ribbon skirts, and so we have a little fashion show tonight. And the fashion show is combined with, their performers. And so they're going to be reading some original poetry that they wrote, focusing on vaping. Vaping is a really serious health issue for our young people. And so we thought this is a good way, people will be here at the conference, a good way to get out the message about the dangers of vaping, and but also do something that's a little fun. So the youth are going to come out in their ribbon skirts, and speaking of sweatshirts, what you're designed, and so that's going to be a lot of fun.
So the idea of the fashion show is to show that we can use culture as prevention, and that it doesn't have to be the black and white linear fashion of doing things. So we decided to take it to the runway and let the kids talk about it, but also show that we can do these teachings and use our culture as prevention, as a way to get the word out. So we're ready to hit the road with this after tonight and travel around doing this fashion show. And we hope that the kids will get better each time.
Oh, that is really exciting.
That's really cool. And one of the things I also wanted you to sort of touch on a little bit is that the Youth Theater Ensemble has been around for quite a while. They do some amazing work. They also, I believe, you have a closed YouTube channel circuit that has a lot of their sort of past art pieces on that people can watch. So talk a little bit about where the theater group started and the work that they've done over the last few years, and sort of kind of the direction that they're going to be moving in over the next year.
Well, we began theater, using theater as prevention over 30 years ago. And we worked with Spider Woman Theater, and our first performances were focused on HIV prevention. And over the years, we focused on teen pregnancy. During COVID, we actually, one of our young staff, Peyton Counts, wrote a play called In My Shoes, which focused on suicide prevention, but also had some under themes of bullying and missing and murdered Indian women. I mean, there was a lot packed into that. And that's on YouTube. So In My Shoes, if you look that up, you'll find it. And that's free for anybody to show to your classrooms, show to your young people. And right now that we're going to be working on a new play on the opioid addiction in our community, and a little more serious topic, but will Kirby, the director, has sort of laid out a framework, and so we'll be working with the youth to devise the rest of the piece, but hopefully that will be ready to go in January. So it's a great way. The youth are all paid, and we've had youth come in at 11 and stay with us through college. And they really, when you're talking about primary prevention, they are the primary prevention. The audience are sort of the tertiary piece. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing work.
Yeah, thank you so much for both being here this evening and telling us about not just the First Medicines Conference and the work that you're doing around that, but also the work that you're doing in changing the health of our young people, and work that you've been doing over the last 30 years. Not a lot of people know this, but the Indigenous Peoples Task Force has been around for 35 years, something like that, 40. And Sharon's been at the helm for a really long time, and she is an amazing leader in our community. I just really want to say Chimigwich to both of you for being here tonight and talking to us about your work and sharing us your knowledge and wisdom and your love of the people. So thank you.
Yes, Miigwech to you both for joining us on Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We'll be back shortly after this break. I just want to let everybody know before we go that this portion of the show is brought to you by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition. And we will be back very soon on Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We'll have more with Dr. Antony Stately.
Ramsey County's Transforming Systems Together initiative is rethinking how the county delivers services and invests in the community, including through grants. Grants are available to support individuals and organizations providing prevention services and serving vulnerable youth involved in child protection and foster care. To learn more and see if you or your organization qualifies, visit ramseycounty.us/TST grants. Applications are due by September 30th.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shamblat. My dad is Dr. Scott Shamblat from Shamblat Family Dentistry. A lot of people are afraid of the dentist, but you don't have to be. My dad makes going to the dentist comfortable and even fun. He won't be mad if you haven't seen a dentist in a long time. He just wants to take care of you and your teeth. If you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shamblat Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblatfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
Hey, Patrick for Zero Res. All summer long, the kids have dragged in dirt, mud, worse, a few bugs, maybe more than a few bugs. And they made the house stink too. The good news is the kids are back in school, which means there's no better time to call Zero Res to clear the summer stench. Zero Res will clean up the leftover beach day fun that didn't stay at the beach, the spills left behind after the sleepovers, and more. And you can score big savings this month. Get 3 rooms pre-treated and cleaned starting at just $139 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Call today at 952-0RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. And when nothing but new will do, nobody knows floors better than Zero Res. If you're thinking about new flooring, check out zfloors.com for Z Floors by Zero Res. Backward or forward spells the same. Zero Res.
Hey, Tom Harvin here, and you can catch me live every weekday from 11 to 2 following the Stephanie Miller Show right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Hello, this is Ellie Krug with Ellie 2.0 Radio. Now my show will be on Saturdays from 10 to 11 and replayed on Sundays from 1 to 2. You will get to the best of Ellie 2.0 with talking about idealism with guests who come in and who are idealistic, who are trying to change the world, and you will get me, Super Idealist. Tune in. We can't wait to hear from you, and you'll hear from me Saturdays from 10 to 11.
Hi, this is Chad from AM 950. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed roofing, siding, window, and insulation contractor in the metro. Ryan is so excited about working with AM 950 and our listeners that he wants to help us grow.
This is Ryan, owner of Snap Construction. I was friends with Chad long before I started marketing with him. I was a bit skeptical of radio advertising before Chad convinced us to run ads. The advertising's been so successful, we want to help the station grow. We've absolutely loved working with the listeners of AM 950, and we all know how extremely important this radio station is to the community. To help AM 950 grow this summer, Snap Construction will be putting up proceeds to assist the station in marketing on social media. Snap Construction encourages you to follow, engage, share, and interact on the AM 950 social media platforms. Together, we can all work to ensure AM 950 continues to thrive and grow in our communities. We stand by our work with a lifetime craftsmanship guarantee. For a free estimate or more information on our financing, call 612-333-SNAP or check us out online.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lulia. Clear tonight with a low of 51, then sunshine Tuesday with a high of 82. Crooner Supper Club has an exciting mix of shows on 3 stages to round out the summer season. Find the concert experience that's right for you at croonersmn.com. Crooner Supper Club, just north of 694 off Central Avenue in Fridley.
Bijou.
I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake.
Welcome back, everybody, to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We're here with Dr. Antony Stately, and I'm Ogama Ganuakwe. Thanks so much for staying tuned in. Dr. Stately, those were some wonderful guests you had on today.
Yes, I was really happy that they were able to be guests with us tonight. They worked all day long. Way before this, they were working, planning this conference, putting it together. I know that they've been planning this for quite a while. And I think this is probably, I'm not sure if this is, I think it's not the first one, it's the second one that they've had since the beginning of the pandemic. And it was, I was excited about it for two reasons. One, I didn't have to drive very far to go to it because I live in Prior Lakes. That was really exciting. And second of all, it's just such a really wonderful conference to go to because it always brings in these amazing speakers from around the country that are all doing really interesting work in, using our medicines to help promote our health and our well-being and promote not just in our bodies, but in our mind, our spirits, our emotions, our physical well-being. It really focuses a lot on sort of like the overall holistic approach to health and well-being. And the people are always really wonderful and they're positive, and it's just, we always really get great speakers, great food. There's no soda at all in this conference. You have to drink water or tea or something, which is kind of good, good example setting. And I think the other thing I just think is really awesome about it is the Sharon and her team does a really great job of centering our young people in like all of the work they do, right? And I think that's just so important, for us to do that as Native nations and as Native communities, is not forgetting that we're here. The reason we're here, the reason we're doing our work, the reason that we are here present at this moment was because, several generations ago, people were thinking about us here, planning for us to be here, right? And not forgetting that the purpose of much of what we do is for the generations that are coming, not just the ones that are here now, but the little ones that are here now, but their children and their children's children and their children's children's children. And that is a principle that we have held for a very long, since time immemorial. And we see that happening every single time I'm in this conference, and it's just such a wonderful experience. So yeah. And I'm really proud of the work they're doing. Like, I'm a board member and I kind of feel like, oh, I should be tooting my own horn about them. But, I've been on the board for almost 7 years and I'm just very, very proud of what they do. So.
And you should be. They're doing really wonderful work at the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And if you're just tuning in, you've just missed Sharon Day and Suzanne Nash from the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. And for our listeners who are listening to us live right now and you want to go back and catch that, I just want to let you know you can listen to any episode of Native Roots Radio anytime on iTunes and Spotify, and also on the TuneIn app for radio, as well as our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram channels. So check those out. Dr. Stately is here with us from the Native American Community Clinic, and Native American Community Clinic has also a fabulous YouTube channel as well. They've got some really great information on traditional medicines, how to take good care of yourself, some really great speakers and talks that they've done as well too. So check out the YouTube channels for both Indigenous Peoples Task Force and Native American Community Clinic. Dr. Stately, you're down here at the First Medicines Conference, and I just seen something that came through my social media feed just yesterday, and it was a picture of a wooden stick, and there was pictures of the plants carved into the edges of the stick, and it said they just discovered this, and they believe that our ancestors wrote down basically the recipes for plant medicines and kept them.
Oh, wow.
Out of desperation, because people didn't know, the language, and those things were rapidly leaving. And it was basically put like, never doubt that your ancestors loved you and were thinking of you. And I think in this modern age, we don't do that enough. We don't do that as much as we should.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is actually absolutely an amazing thing. And, I think what's beautiful about that is a couple of different things. One is I think that probably it would make sense to me that our forebears, our ancestors, maybe even some of my grandparents and my great grandparents, the people who sort of kind of were living through the early days of colonization, especially during the 1800s and the early 1900s, during the Indian Wars, quote unquote, and the height of the worst part of the colonization and the attempts to force us to assimilate, boarding school, those kinds of things, that people were starting to think about, like, how do we preserve this knowledge? How do we make sure that these things are going to be around for our children and our children's children? And I get to teach my kids and hand off some of these things to my sons because somebody 2 or 3 generations ago was making sure that our language was preserved, that our information and knowledge about the medicines were preserved, our ceremonial practices were preserved. Every time I go into a lodge, and if I bring my sons in, I especially amplify this. I always say, thank you. I'm going to thank not just the person who's pouring the water and the other folks who helped build the lodge and make it, but I always say thank you to our ancestors for ensuring that we still have access to these ceremonies, that they preserve those ways for us. And then it's our responsibility now to make sure that we preserve those things in perpetuity. The way we do it right now probably looks differently. It probably looks a lot like what we're doing now, right? Which is like, we're using social media, we're using technology, we're using all these different ways, not the sides of spoons, but we're doing it in different ways that our young people will continue to carry forward far into the future. And when I see things like that and I hear things like that, it gives me a lot of hope for our future generations. It tells me that we're on a good path, we're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a ton of social media content about these kind of things. I know I follow Alexis Nicole. She's listed on TikTok. She's Black Forager. And I just watched a video from her recently too, and she was talking about a little plant, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's got little yellow flowers on it. And she said she scoured the internet looking for any information about this plant. And she said that it's not really doing it justice. It's edible, it's got tons of vitamin C, it's really healthy for you. But when you look it up on every website, it's described as a weed. It's described as not having any purpose. And she said, we still have some of the information. Some people still know that this plant is a good food source for certain things and what it heals. But you think about all these other plants that exist that were no longer cultivated, no longer taught about, no longer talked about, that we've lost the knowledge about. For indigenous people, from Black people, from people from South America, all of these different plants throughout the entire continent, even in Canada, what's now Canada, all of the Americas were colonized, and we lost all of that information. Not all of it, but much of that information. And it brings so much hope to see people bringing back. But when you think of the scale of it all, gosh, it breaks my heart to think of how much we've already lost. And can we get that back? Can his science help us get that back?
Yeah, I think there's a way for us to get it back. One of the things that I always tell people, because I really believe this, and I think it's fundamental for us to believe this, that we as Indigenous people, we've been, I tell people all the time, like, we are the first scientists. Like, we mapped the stars 10,000 years before Galileo did. We there's a lot that we knew about the world and the cosmos and the way that those two, and that information is really embedded in our DNA. It's embedded in who we are, and a lot of it actually stems from sort of like the relationship that we have with the earth and with the cosmos and with one another. And we can revitalize that. We can re-engage that. We can bring this back to our everyday lives. Does it mean it's going to look exactly like it did 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago? Probably not. Our world has changed, right? But we are also Indigenous people. We are also, adaptive. We adapt to our environment. We adapt to the change in the times. Our cultural practices and the way in which we can use our medicines and all those other things have also adapted over the hundreds of millennia since we had them. It's a unique feature of who we are as Indigenous people. We borrow practices from each other's communities. We share songs. We share, dances, we share regalia, we share tools, we share words and language. It's who we are. So we're constantly innovating as Indigenous people. I think I don't think people really think about us that way, but I think it's really important to think about us that way because oftentimes I tell people this as well. And when I used to teach in academies, I would say, the world is catching up to what Indigenous people have always known, scientifically and in other ways, right? We are the leaders of the world in terms of understanding it and in terms of understanding how to survive all of the things that we face as daily challenges. Everything from climate change and war and peace and all these other things are really important technologies that Native people have developed and Native people have been using since the beginning of time. That intuitive scientific brain that we have that is centered on creation and not destruction. That's what separates us from non-Indigenous people. We don't use those powers to destroy. We use those powers to create and to enhance and make the world a beautiful place. And I think if we continue to move in that direction, we'll be in a good place, even 3 and 4 to 5 generations out.
I certainly hope so. I have 2 young children. Dr. Stately, as you know, I have a 9-year-old and I have a small newborn. I have an infant, and I work really hard to try to teach them about what I do know, which is about this much. It's not very much, that's for sure. But through organizations like yours, Native American Community Clinic and the Indigenous Peoples Task Force, I now have those resources to be able to watch things, to consume media that can educate me so I can educate my children. So the way that we're doing this now and that we're continuing to adapt as Native people is just absolutely 100% easy to see as we come into.
Gives me a lot of hope.
There's a lot of hope.
Yeah. I have to leave, so you're on your own for the last session. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm going to go watch the fashion show
today. Enjoy the fashion show, Dr. Stately.
Thank you.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We'll be right back. I'm Ogama Ganua Kwe, and I will have news for you on the last segment tonight. Thanks for tuning in.
Keep loving it.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Don't fall for vaccine misinformation. Local medical professionals are available to answer any of your questions. Initial shots and boosters are safe for people who are pregnant and even young children. Right now, vaccines are available for anyone over 6 months of age, while boosters are available for anyone over the age of 5. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Buju Anin, everybody. This is Ogama Ganuakwe standing in tonight. Robert Pilot is away tonight, and we had a wonderful guest host, Dr. Antony Stately, who brought on some wonderful guests from the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. I just want to let everybody know that this is about to be the loneliest howl ever heard on live radio, but this portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations. Oh! It's just me for this last segment today, everybody. I've got some news for you from all over Turtle Island. However, tonight I'm going to start a little bit local. Today on the show, we were talking about theater and culture as a way for leading a good path for our youth. So I want to highlight that the new Native Theater in the Twin Cities is presenting The Hermit, the Nut, the Monk, and the Crow. It is a new play and puppet build workshop, and they have a call for Native actors and BIPOC artisans. They're going to be running Tuesdays, September 13th, 20th, and 27th from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the new Native Theater's Division of Indian Work office in Minneapolis. They, again, are looking for play and puppet build workshops for Native actors and BIPOC artisans. It is a paid gig. You get to have fun while acting, puppet making. They're looking for 5 Native actors age ranges from 18 to 60 years old, and Native and BIPOC artists interested in costuming, design, or behind-the-scenes theater experience. I believe they have 7 spots open for that. If you are interested, show up at the Division of Indian Work office for the New Native Theater on Tuesday, September 13th, 20th, and 27th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. or email Rihanna, RHIANA, at newnativetheater.org for more information. So exciting happening down the Twin Cities. Another event that is happening put on by the Little Earth's Residents Association. They're having a holistic approach to collective community healing called Nujimoin, and it is adults and adolescents groups, case management, one-on-one counseling sessions, traditional healing, and sweat lodge and other ceremonial activities. You can call and set up an appointment today. If you want to speak with a counselor, you could speak with George Goggle-Eye. The number is 612-242-1470. Or you can speak with the other counselor, Ombaji, at 612-248-9579. They do want to note that our mental health is intertwined with our culture, our family, our spiritual practices, and our land. Again, you can find some holistic help and community-based healing for mental health through Nujimoin and the Little Earth Residents Association. Very exciting things that are happening in the Twin Cities, down in the Indian Quarter there. National news, Chief Marilyn or Lynn Roberge Malerba of the Mohegan tribe was sworn in as a U.S. Treasurer just this afternoon. She wore her traditional regalia during her historic swearing in, and she is now the 45th Treasurer of the United States, and she is the first ever Native American to hold that office. She was again sworn in at the U.S. Department of the Treasury in Washington, D.C., and her signature will now appear along with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on U.S. currency. So that is a pretty big deal nationally for Native people. I am just so excited for this to happen, and she was sworn in and looked over at Deb Haaland as she gave her speech. She opened her speech and said, Deb, I see you weeping a little bit. Please don't make me cry too, Madam Secretary. She said as she gave her signature, that's going to be featured on the U.S. currency. So that came in today from Indian Country Today. So I just want to highlight Indian Country Today and Polly Danette Claw, who brought that article in and wrote that beautiful article about such a beautiful, wonderful thing that's happening nationally for us in Indian country. Another great thing that happened kind of on a national level here is the Native Organizers Alliance put together a letter from Congress asking Biden to support tribal co-management of public lands. So Representative Raul Grijalva, who is an Arizona representative, sent a letter to President Biden, which was co-signed by 42 members of Congress, and it asked President Biden to expand tribal co-management of U.S. public lands, waters, and resources. In a statement from Judith LeBlanc, who is Caddo and the executive director of the Native Organizers Alliance, she said, "Nobody knows our nation's lands, waters, and resources better than the tribal nations and indigenous peoples who have lived here since time began. Our people have always fished these waters, harvested our medicines and foods, and cared for our ancestral lands. The traditional knowledge our people have about our ecosystems is invaluable." This is wonderful news, and I hope that President Biden does go through with this. In their letter to President Biden, Chair Grijalva and the other lawmakers highlighted specific recommended actions for tribal co-management, and their recommendations were largely based on expert witness testimony shared at the National Resources Committee hearing back on March 8th. The lawmakers suggested these actions, including utilizing existing authorities to expand tribal co-management of federal lands and waters, and promoting the use of co-management agreements or provisions in land management plans consisting with obligations under existing law, basically saying that they want to find a way to protect tribal treaty rights, cultural resources, and subsistence uses on federal public lands through co-management and agreements. And, we need to extend, and they've also noted that they want to incentivize agencies to expand co-management opportunities and to engage in co-management with tribal governments. So this is a lot about the things that we talk about here on Native Roots Radio, where we need to be working together, and that the nation as a whole could, do a lot to learn from our Native people who are standing up and speaking out and taking action to protect water, land, and peoples. Speaking of those who are stepping up, yesterday about 600 people joined together outside the U.S. Capitol, and they were, not yesterday, on Friday, 600 people joined together outside the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., and they were calling for an end to the dirty pipeline deal. The Appalachian Resistance Comes to D.C. event, where frontline organizers and Indigenous water protectors and climate activists traveled from all corners of the U.S. and brought together the resounding message, no sacrifice zones and stop the dirty deal. Prior to the rally, delegations spent the day lobbying Congress members to share their stories and urge them to oppose Manchin's deal. If Manchin's deal is passed, the legislation would fast-track pipeline projects, gut bedrock environmental protections, threaten tribal authority, and exacerbate the crisis we find ourselves in this climate crisis that we are, of course, all aware that we are in. Some speakers included Joy Braun, who is a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and the Indigenous Environmental Network was there sharing testimonies from the front line. Many of the frontliners stood up and had to say that, they've had enough of being used as bargaining chips and fossil fuel schemes. And one of those pipelines and oil initiatives that are getting put through is Line 5. So if you're listening to us live in Wisconsin, Line 5 is something that definitely threatens your backyard. You can call 917-791-2257 and tell your representative to oppose this deal and to work for climate and climate justice. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Miigwech to everybody who commented today. Miigwech to Dr. Antony Stately and our wonderful guests, Sharon Day and Suzanne Nash from the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. Robert Pilot will be back tomorrow. On Tuesday, we have an ultra special guest planned for tomorrow, as well as Rock the Vote Native Style coming in. You've been listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Don't forget to resist, divest, join a group, and run for office.
Hi, this